Yeah, I'm completely in agreement with that, and I think a lot of it comes down to, point one of the three things, right? I think a lot of it comes down to mindset, right? Like we all set goals. The reason why, people don't push beyond outside of the comfort zone is, they either their goals aren't big enough or they don't have the requisite mindset and belief in themselves.
Hey there, Jeff Barnes here again with the Angels Exits and Acquisitions podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Now, we have an incredible interview today with a friend of mine, Carl Allen at Dealmaker Wealth Society. And Carl has been in the mergers and acquisitions business for 32 years now. He's done hundreds of deals himself. He has an entire curriculum for students, and he does a lot of deals with his students as well. And I know for a fact that you are going to learn a lot of great things from Carl during this interview. Now, we went a little bit longer than I normally go, but that is because Carl was such a gem and such a fountain full of information that I think it was really important for us to capture as much of that as we possibly could and share it with you. So if you like this, do us a favor, give us a comment, a like, a share on whatever platform you're watching, whether it's YouTube or on any of the podcast channels and stations out there. And let us know if you like this comment. And as always, subscribe for future episodes. And I can't wait to hear what your thoughts are on this episode with Carl Allen on Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions.
Welcome to Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions, the place to learn how to fund, scale, exit, and massively profit as an angel investor or entrepreneur. Brought to you by the Angel Investors Network. And now, here's your host, Jeff Barnes.
Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. I'm your host here, Jeff Barnes, and today I'm joined with Carl Allen, who is now in Austin, Texas, and is of the Dealmaker Wealth Society, this company. Carl, how are you?
I'm very well, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Pleasure to have you here. We had you out at our Nashville event a little while back speaking on it. It was just an incredible reception. Everybody really loved it. Got a chance to know you a little bit more and, really looking forward to doing business with you in the future. But
Absolutely.
For those folks who have no idea who Carl Allen is, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are?
Absolutely. So I've been buying and selling companies now for 32 years. I know I look very young, but I'm not. I'm in my mid-50s now. So I grew up as a Wall Street guy. So I graduated from college in 1992, and I went to work for Bank of America doing mergers and acquisitions. Within 5-6 years, the whole technology industry was kind of blowing up. So I specialized in tech M&A deals. So I did a lot of deals with IBM, Microsoft, Cisco, Dell, those guys. And then kind of left that, went to business school in Chicago, worked in private equity for a while. And then my last real job was working for Hewlett-Packard. So I was working for a PE firm. We sold one of our technology portfolio companies to HP, and I ended up going along with that deal. And then I stayed at HP till 2008, buying and selling businesses. So spent tens of billions of dollars of their money buying software companies and services companies and all those good things. And then I had a big epiphany in 2008. It was February the 1st. My son was born 4 weeks premature. I was in Moscow trying to close a deal with HP, and I had to fly back to see my son be born. And that just kind of hit me right between the eyes, Jeff. And I thought, well, I need to be a father now. I need to be a family man. I need to be around. I can't be flying all over the world on Gulfstream doing deals for other people. So I retired. I was 37. And I got bored very, very quickly. And I decided to become a business broker, believe it or not, right? So I decided to be a business broker. And the first deal that I was literally supposed to be selling the night before closing, I was selling it to a big trade buyer. The trade buyer pulled out. And I basically saved the day and decided to acquire it. So I leveraged my Wall Street skills of raising money and negotiating terms. And I bought that business. It was a transportation business, and I knew nothing about that industry at the time. $5 million deal. And then one of the things that I learned doing that deal, which I didn't really know as a Wall Street guy, is when you're buying a Main Street business, which is obviously where I'm focused these days, it's a lot more about seller psychology than it is about the math and the money, right? Those things are still important. But understanding seller motivation, understanding what they truly want out of a deal, more from the intangible side is so powerful, right? So all those early deals kind of taught me that. And I probably bought and sold over 100 businesses personally since then, which affords me the right to coach on this, right? So I have a massive global community of deal makers that are buying businesses. Some of them, they're small. Some of them, they're huge. I've got 7 students now doing billion-dollar roll-ups by buying lots and lots of different companies in a particular niche, raising lots and lots of capital, which we taught them how to do, and really doing some transformational work. So I probably spent 20% of my time coaching and about 80% of my time, doing deals. I own over 20 companies today in e-com, professional services, engineering, retail, coaching businesses as well. And it's great to be able to do this. But I've had to learn the hard way. I'm not one of these guys that stumbled on this, bought a comic book store or a laundromat. I learned this on Wall Street, but I've been able to leverage all of that knowledge to teach people how to do what I do.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Yeah, you didn't just go to a conference or a seminar one day and wake up on the Monday after the conference is over and say, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do," right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you said a lot there, and I want to unpack a few of these things. So, obviously, one of the first questions a lot of folks are going to have is you don't really have the accent of the Wall Street guy. So, where are you from originally?
Yeah, so I was born in Manchester, England. Although I've spent a lot of time in the US. Now I live here permanently, but I've got that broad Northern English accent. So when I'm back at home, I do talk very, very differently. I'm a lot broader in my accent. But so I've got more of a transatlantic kind of vibe now going on. But yeah, I'm
nice. I like it. And so, okay, you got into Wall Street at a very early age in life, and you started doing this work. And my guess is it was one of those things. And I don't know what your upbringing was, but for a lot of folks, I got to work in the capital markets as well in the corporate world, and that was an eye-opening experience, right? Because you're not playing with your money; you're playing with house money or investor money and things like that. What were some of the early epiphanies that you might have had working in the Wall Street world that you've been able to carry over into, now your current profession of buying and scaling businesses?
Yeah, so I think the biggest epiphany I had, and this really kind of transformed while I was a deal maker, is that there's a lot of money in the world that I call it lazy money, right? There's a lot of money in the world where people, they don't want to do the work of buying a business and growing a business and creating all that shareholder value, but they're happy to put some of that capital into the deal and kind of ride on the coattails, right? There's so many bright people out there that are finding deals and have really got the chops to create shareholder value. And I'm doing both of those things now, right? I never invest in my own deals, right? I use other people's money, but then I invest in a lot of my other students. If I find a student that's really got it going on, they're staying in LA, they're buying a business that they can add tremendous value to, and they share my core values of noble entrepreneurship, and like, one of my kind of acid tests with people, and it's like with you, I'd love to do some stuff with you in the future, because I look at you and think, this is a guy I'd love to go out and have a beer with, right? I'd absolutely love to go out and have a beer with. So that's like my acid test. If I like people to go and drink beer with them, I'll partner with them in their deals. And the last 10 businesses I acquired with people inside of my own community, which was amazing. But yeah, money, the money's in the money, right? And I think there's trillions of dollars of capital out there. And these people, they don't want to do all the stuff themselves. They're happy to partner with people like us, and we can create shareholder value for them.
Yeah, I love that. And that was my really big epiphany too. I grew up in a, pretty much a dirt floor poor household. We actually were homeless for a little bit when I was growing up, and I was raised in this world that rich people are evil, right? And so, that translated into, okay, all you have to do in life to succeed is work your butt off nonstop every single day for as long as you can, and eventually you'll make some money. And I realized shortly on in the Navy, working my butt off wasn't really getting me very far. I was, getting the accolades, but I wasn't making any more money. And so I went down this rabbit hole of learning about wealth creation and getting money and where the money is. And that eventually led into working with these folks in the capital markets in big insurance companies, right? $260 billion under management. And the thing that really shifted my entire paradigm about investing and acquisitions and running businesses was when a guy said, yeah, we do about $100 million in transactions. I said, okay, well, I mean, that's cool. I said, he goes, daily. I mean, what do you mean daily? He goes, about every 24 hours, we have about $100 million that shifts hands through our Bermuda accounts and all of this, and we move money around. I'm like, $100 million a day that you're trying. He goes, yeah, and I have a small division, right? Because there's the other guys out here that are running 500 million, $1 billion in transactions almost every day.
That's wild.
And it was mind blowing, right? I could not fathom that much money was moving around. This was one company, right? And it wasn't even the biggest company in the financial services world.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that that's happening all day, every day, and people don't realize it. And the other point that you made that I think is really, really important is that a lot of people don't want to do the work. Once you have the money, and it could be the private equity fund, it could be the hedge fund, the venture capital fund, it could be, the doctor, the lawyer, the person who sold their business that has a lot of money. They don't really want to do all the work that it takes to do this thing.
Nope.
So the lazy money is a great place to find those investors. And I love that you talked about the raising capital and putting the deal together. So what would you say is maybe the top? I don't want to narrow it down to the number one thing, but like the top 1 to 3 things that you think are really responsible for your long-term success in mergers, acquisitions, buying companies, and so on.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And so the 3 things for me are, number one, this really is a mindset game, right? So and I think this is the secret to life, right? It's like a lot of people know what they want to do, and a lot of people know how to do it, but what holds them back really is their why, their purpose, right? It's dialing in your purpose and why you actually want to do this, right? So that's really, really important. And, the funny thing is, Jeff, nobody wants to buy a business. Nobody wants to own a business, right? That's the thing. What they want is the benefits that come
right
owning businesses, right? It could be wealth creation. It could be cash flow. It could be time freedom. It could be ego, pride, assurance, legacy. Doesn't matter what it is. But then even if you think money is your goal, it's not, right? Money is just a tool. It's a tool to do other things, help your community, your family, live a better life, whatever it is. So I think number one is really deciding, what is your why? Why do you want to do this? That's the first thing. The second successful trait, and there is actually 3, so glad you said that. The second successful trait is this is a relationship business, right? The number one skill you can develop to become a deal maker is the power of building relationships. It's people and people. When I was a Wall Street guy, $1 billion transactions, I did tons of them. It's math, financial engineering, share swaps, legal structures, all those different things. Yeah, you got to build relationships. But on Main Street, you want to buy a $5 million engineering company from somebody that's been in that business every day for 30 years. And it's like sending their child to college. They want a safe, trusted pair of hands to come in and take it over. You got to build a relationship. Right? You have to build a relationship. You have to stay in lane. You have to do deals in areas that you understand, you're passionate about, and you can add value to. Whether you want to be an investor in that deal or the operator of that business, it all stems from the relationship. And then the third thing that you got to do is you've got to execute, right? You've got to execute. You can't just learn this stuff. You have to implement, right? You have to take action in the market. And the analogy I use is like, if you want to build muscle, right? If you want to build muscle, you've got to go to the gym 3 to 5 times a week. You've got to do so many sets, so many reps, and then put the right fuel into your body. Right? If you want to buy businesses, your reps and sets are you've got to originate deal flow. You've got to meet sellers and build world-class relationships. And then you've got to make creative win-win offers on those deals. If you do that systematically over a period of time, it's impossible for you not to buy a business because there's so many deals out there, right? And we got the baby boomers retiring 10,000 of them a day and a ton of them in small businesses. There's trillions of dollars of lazy capital out there just looking for somebody to conduit that into an acquisition. You've just got to get into the market and do the work. And it's that simple. Like buying businesses is not hard. It just takes some hard work, right? This is what I call a get rich slow scheme, right? It takes time, effort, discipline. You might screw up from time to time, but you learn from those mistakes. I've learned 1,000 times more from my failures than I have from my wins, which is why I can be a coach, right? I can stop people making the mistakes that I've made over the last 3 decades, right? I think it's as simple as that.
Before continuing, please subscribe and share this video to help us reach more people and stay notified of our latest releases. Now, let's continue watching and learning.
I love that, man. So I want to unpack a couple things you said. The get rich slow process. I was literally having a call with our mastermind members yesterday, and we were talking about the steps that it takes to be successful in an acquisition, to be successful in going down this path and learning. And obviously, I'm not the end all be all expert when it comes to acquisitions, right? I'm more on the capital raising
side.
You're
pretty good though. You got the chops there, man.
I appreciate that, but I focus a lot on the capital raising side and then the operations of a business. That part I know really, really well. But we were having a guest at our mastermind meeting, and he was talking about the steps, and he said the same thing, which is there's not a lot of really, really technical things that you need to know. Like you don't need to have a PhD in molecular engineering to buy a business, right? But you need to be able to follow these steps. And if you can follow the steps and you can learn, because you're not going to get it right the first time, right? We all know that. There's nothing in life that we ever get right the first time. And then there's another thing that you said, and I want to hear your take on it, on my approach to this, which is you're saying, okay, if you want to build muscle, you got to go to the gym 3 times a week or more, and you got to do that. And of course, I love working out, and it's my way to get out of my head and get out of the office, right? And so there's another thing that I learned throughout life, and I think you'll agree with this one, is that putting in the reps is one thing, right? But there's the guy that can, live on the street with you, and he can put in the reps, and he go to the gym, and he can work out 3 to 5 times a week, and he can say, okay, I'm going to go run, and I'm going to, maybe I want to be a runner. And then there's the Olympic athlete, right? It's on the completely other end of the spectrum. Maybe they're putting in more reps. But here's the thing that is very different from the Olympic athlete versus the guy who's just working out for fitness, and that is getting outside of the comfort zone on a regular basis, right?
Yep.
You can't build muscle if you continue to lift the 10-pound dumbbells every single day and that's all you ever do. You have to start pushing yourself and pushing yourself and pushing yourself. And I think this is where confidence is built. And it's also where 99% of the people fail, right? Is that they say, okay, I learned the thing. I got the thing, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to start doing the thing. But they never push beyond that comfort zone.
Nope.
And they never get to that point where they're putting themselves outside of their little box. And as a result, they never fully succeed. I'm curious what your take is on that, and if you've seen your students go through this.
Yeah, I'm completely in agreement with that. And I think a lot of it comes down to, point one of the 3 things, right? I think a lot of it comes down to mindset, right? Like we all set goals. The reason why, people don't push beyond outside of the comfort zone is, they either, their goals aren't big enough, or they don't have the requisite mindset and belief in themselves to actually want to do it. And there's a saying that I use, called the bitch voice, right? A lot of people, we all have a bitch voice, and we all have a boss voice. Some days your boss voice dominates. It tells you can do things. You can push outside of your comfort zone. It's painful, but it's worth it. But a lot of times we have our bitch voice that tells us we can't do things. We're not good at, we're not capable of achieving those goals. And getting that right balance in life is really, really important. And getting uncomfortable, getting painful in anything that you do, that's where the growth is. Like that's where the growth is. When you're lifting weights, like the first, let's say you're doing 10 reps of, whatever set, right? The first 9 do nothing. It's the 10th one, the one that really hurts. That's where the growth comes from, right? And that's the same in everything, and especially in buying businesses, right? It's not just about thinking big. It's about doing the work and getting out there into the market. And like, I could tell you so many stories. I'll tell you one quick story, right? So I had one student, it's called Frederick, and he was, he was in his late 50s, great guy. And he sat me down one day. We were at one of my events, and he just said, "Man, you know what? I just don't think I can do this. Like this is too hard for me. Right? This is just going to be too difficult. I don't have it in me." So we kind of had a conversation. I said, "Well, hey, you've got a limiting belief, right? We're going to get rid of that, and we're going to replace it by what Tony Robbins taught me, which is called an empowering truth." So I said, "Well, tell me about your life." So he told me about his life, and he said, "But hey, last 3 years, I've beat cancer, right? I've managed to kind of beat cancer." I said, "Dude, you've just done the hardest thing on planet Earth, right? You've beat cancer. You've had the mindset, the mental toughness, the determination, the fortitude, the strength, and the absolute resilience to beat this. And you think buying a business is beyond you?" I said, "Have you got any idea like how that is?" And I have another guy, he works for NASA, right? He's a rocket scientist. And he's like, "Man, you know what? I'd love to own my own business, but yeah, I think it's going to be beyond me." I'm like, "Dude, you guys have put men on the moon. Do you know how freaking hard that is? Like, buying a business is not hard. It just takes a little bit of hard work." So oftentimes you've just got to shift their beliefs inside of the conversations that they're having inside of their head. But you're absolutely right. Olympians, those guys, like, or supreme athletes like Michael Jordan and all these guys, Kobe. I've just moved into my house. I've not put my basketball shirts up yet, but those guys, they just had incredible beliefs and goals, but they worked so hard on their mindset every single day. They had coaches and conditioning and all of that stuff. But it's all about belief.
Absolutely, man. I mean, we could talk for days on just this one topic, I think, and a lot of people will still not get it into their brain. I love that idea that you have the rocket scientists, you have the guy who beat cancer, and they were able to put themselves in a mindset where they could achieve a thing that they really wanted at some point in their life. But now they're getting into this new realm. They're like, "Yeah, but I don't know if I can do it." Those doubts start to creep in. And one of my favorite personal development books of all time, that I don't know that it was ever meant to be a personal development book, is Man's Search for Meaning, right? And Viktor Frankl was a World War II Holocaust survivor, watched people killed and die all around him. And he talked about, in one of those chapters, one of his stories was this guy who kept saying, "We're going to get rescued by Christmas. We're going to get rescued by Christmas." So for months he was saying that. And Christmas Day came, they didn't get rescued. And by that night he passed away. And it was, and Viktor Frankl went on to create logotherapy, essentially, a new form of psychotherapy, and said what he determined and what he discovered was that your mind will make up your reality, right? And if you have a belief in your mind of what's going to happen and that thing is negative, well, that negative thing is going to happen. If you make it up in your mind that a positive thing is going to happen and you frame it the right way, that positive thing will happen.
I love that story. Like, that's so powerful. I'm going to have to get that book. It's like Roger Bannister, right?
Yeah.
Like, before he broke the 4-minute mile, nobody did it because nobody thought it was possible, right?
Yep.
And then, when he did it for the first time, within the next year, I think 50 other people broke it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane, right? Like, it
is.
If you believe you can do anything, like,
absolutely, man.
If you believe you can't, you won't. Your entire neuropsychology will stop you doing it, right? Your belief comes from your subconscious part of your brain, and all that is, it's a filter, right? If you believe you can do something, your entire body and brain will go to work on making it happen. If you believe you can't do it, your entire body and brain will work on stopping you from doing it, right? It really is. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And one other thing that I want to add into here with regards to these really smart people, right? You work with really smart people. I work with really smart people. And sometimes you're like, oh, you just want to wring them by the neck. Because they're like, why can't you get out of your own way, right? And what I've found is that a lot of people, like, let's just take the PhD, the rocket scientist. He learned something, or she learned something in a sequential manner that eventually got them to that expertise.
Yeah.
And then they come to a course or a seminar, or they see what we're doing, or they hear what we're talking about, and they literally try to swallow the entire thing all at once. And it's overwhelming, right? And they forget that it took them time to become the expert in their field. And they also forget, like you were saying, putting a man on the moon or even curing somebody's cancer, overcoming cancer. It wasn't a solo sport, right? They had a team.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that people forget that the goal is not to do everything yourself, right?
Yeah.
The goal is to find the experts and the people that can help you get where you want to go, but be the person that's pointing to where we want to go, right?
So that is one of the most compelling things like I've ever heard. You're so right. Like, let me tell you a little secret, right? I'm the worst business operator on the planet, right? Do you know how many of my businesses I operate?
Well, after you said that, I'm guessing 0.
Zero. Do you know why? Because they'd all fail, right? That's not my skill set. That's not my superpower. My superpower is raising money, structuring deals, and setting the vision, the culture, and the strategy. And then I get out of the way, right? I'm not the guy that's driving the most, right? Like when I go on vacation, all my businesses grow like exponentially, right? And the longer I'm away, the better that they do, because I just get out of the way, right? So that's been one of the biggest challenges for me in my career is just, getting out of the way. But I partner with really, really smart people. And what I found in my years of doing deals, like one of the mindset limiters that some of my students typically have when they come into one of my programs is they think, well, yeah, I got to own all this thing, right? I got to buy this business. I want to own 100% of this business. It's my business. Okay. But then if you don't want to operate the business, if you just hire somebody to run it for you, are they going to break the walls down as hard versus you giving them, say, 25% of the ownership? You're partnering with them. They're your general manager. You're setting them up for success, and then you're getting out of the way. That person then psychologically becomes a very, very different person. And I've done deals where I've given away half of the company. And people say to me, are you absolutely crazy? No, because I give away half the business, I share control, that GM comes in, 10x the shareholder value within 3 to 4 years, right? If I'd have only given them 5% or 0%, that business would be nowhere near as big, right? So I'm playing that long-term game of creating shareholder value. But then when I put somebody in charge like that and I give them the empowerment to build a team and do the things they need to do, within certain boundaries, of course. And then that means I can own all these different businesses that I just had to worry about. I look at my KPI dashboards once a week. I have a weekly check-in with my leaders of my businesses and I'm good, right? That's all I need to do.
I love that, Matt, because we get a lot of entrepreneurs that come to us and say, hey, I want to raise money, but I don't want to give up any of the company. Well, it's going to be really, really hard for you to raise money from a lot of people, especially if you're not like, Elon Musk, who has, done this. But we always have to tell people, you know how much of Tesla or PayPal Elon owns, or how much of Amazon that Bezos owns? It's like less than 10% of their company, right?
Yep.
And people forget about the fact that you have to give to get. And like you just said, right? Would you rather have 100% of nothing or a small percent of something really, really big?
Yep.
And most people, when they're early in their career, I call them somewhat immature in their thought process, is they really think they need to own everything. And in reality, you don't. You don't want to own 100% of really anything, because that means you're 100% responsible.
Yeah.
And that's where stress comes in,
yeah.
Along with a million other problems.
I completely agree. I will purposely never own 100% of anything. I always want a partner. I always want somebody in, because it's a 1 + 1 = 3 model, isn't it? Like I have a certain set of skills. I don't know everything. I always like to partner with people that are from the industry. I've got great contacts, great connections, and can add a lot of strategic value to the business. That's going to make the business massively more successful, right? And it is a challenge, because some people, they want to go in, they want to own it all. It's an ego thing, and that's fine. But ego can get in the way of creating real shareholder value, in my opinion.
Yeah. And, you said earlier on that you spend about 80% of your time doing this work, right?
Yeah.
So you're out there actually practicing what you preach, and you're doing deals. So I'd love for people to hear a little bit about some of the deals you're doing. You and I were talking right before we started recording here about one of the deals you're working on right now.
Yeah.
I'd love for people to just kind of hear what it is that Carl Allen does when it comes to these acquisitions.
That's why I think it's really, really important if you want to be a coach in anything in life, not only do you have to be a global expert in the topic, you have to still be doing it, right? Because things change, right?
Yes, they do.
Change. Like there are people teaching mergers and acquisitions that were doing it 10 years ago, right? The market's changed in the last 10 months, let alone the last 10 years, right? Financing's changing, deal structures are changing, tax codes are changing, everything's changing, right? The sentiment of sellers, like what they really care about when they're transacting, is changing. It's changed massively since COVID. So the fact that I'm doing deals a lot more than I'm coaching means that I can stay fresh with all the things that are going on. And then, like, when I'm closing a deal the next week, I'll talk to my student base about it. Say, hey, I've just done this deal. Let me talk to you about it. Let me tell you how I did it. And what's crazy, and like we were talking about this before, is anything in life, you can never know 100%. Right? I've been at this 32 years next month, right? 32 years. And I'm still learning. I learn on every single deal, that I do. And yeah, I've looked at tens of thousands of businesses, right? But I still don't know everything, which is crazy. So some of the deals I'm doing at the moment is, I'm doing a couple of really big roll-ups, right? So a roll-up for your audience that might know what it is you pick an industry that's growing and is fragmented, and you buy up lots and lots of different businesses within that, and you combine them together. And the reason why that's really important is if you look at any industry in the world, 99% of all the businesses that play in that market are doing less than $10 million in revenue, right? Yet all the capital that gets really, really excited about deals is chasing that 1%, right? Because it takes the same amount of time to buy $100 million business than it does to buy a $5 million business. It's actually quicker to buy a larger deal because it's easy to raise money, and you've got better systems and processes, better people, and you've got better access to data so that you can do due diligence, right? So it's a lot easier. So in any industry, there's a job for somebody to hoover up lots and lots and lots of small businesses, right? So if there's businesses out there, let's say they're doing $500,000 of profit, and on average, that business might be worth 3 times more. So it's a $1.5 million deal. If you're a $50 million trade buyer, or you're a private equity firm that's got $50 million to spend, you're not going to buy 25 to 30 of these small businesses. You're not. You're looking for that $50 million deal. So in every industry, there's a job for somebody to buy all these little companies and stick them together. And when you do that, there are 3 really cool things that you can do, right? So the first thing you can do is cross-sell. So one of my roll-ups is in the e-commerce space. So I'm buying health and beauty brands for women in e-com, right? So hair, nails, teeth, skin, those types. So imagine I buy a hair care company, which I've done, and I buy a skincare company, which I've done. I've bought those customer bases through those deals, and I've bought those products. I can now cross-sell those products and services for free between those 2 companies, right? If you take the average e-com business, if for every $100 of product that you're selling to the customer, it's probably costing you $20 to make it, and it's probably costing you $30 to $40 to get the customer to buy it. Your cost of customer acquisition, your marketing cost, is between 30 and 40% of your revenue, right? That's standard in e-com. So imagine if you own these 2 businesses and you own these 2 customer bases and those 2 product sets, I can market to those customers now for free. It's called cross-selling, and a certain percentage of them will do that. And that's basically free revenue that I can generate. Obviously, when you bring multiple businesses together, there are duplicate costs that you can take out. You only need one CPA, one CFO. You can get synergies with premises and lots of other overhead that you have in the business. And then oftentimes when you're buying multiple businesses in a market, every business will always have like one best in class feature. In fact, this is the first thing I always look for when I'm buying a business. If a business doesn't have a single superpower that I can leverage, I won't buy it. Because what I'm looking for is a superpower that I can leverage over the rest of the group. So I'll give you an example. A hair care brand that I'm really interested in, that I'm looking to acquire, they've cracked the code on marketing to women, my customer base, via TikTok. None of my other businesses don't know how to do that. So imagine if I take that superpower and I cross-skill up every other business in that market that I buy to do that. And then vice versa. One might have an incredible supply chain that I can share. Another one might be great at doing social media or Instagram shout outs or something like that. So leveraging all those things is really, really important. And then one of the other roll-ups that I'm doing is I'm rolling up actually from within, my main coaching business, Dealmaker Wealth Society. So we're buying lots and lots of other coaching brands and then buying professional services companies that we can plug into our student base to help them close deals faster, like a CPA firm, like legal services, like a marketing agency to help them grow the businesses that they buy. And then, because what I realized is if I look at my customer avatar that I coach, they're either business owners, they're real estate investors, or they're W-2s that want to leave a job and buy a company rather than start a company. If you look at a real estate investor versus a business acquirer, they've got very transferable skill sets and very, very similar mindset. So when I bought a company called Partner Driven, which is our real estate coaching company up in Georgia, all those customers in that business that were buying real estate and getting real estate distributions, they're thinking, wow, I can buy businesses, like I can buy real estate. I know how to find deals. I know how to raise money. I know how to negotiate. I know how to do due diligence. I know how to do everything else. Why don't I buy real estate and buy businesses? And then there's a really cool thing called a 1031 exchange, where if you own a company and you take a big distribution, you can invest it into something similar and just kick the tax can like way down the road. So it's having all those different synergies. And then if you buy a title company, you buy a CPA firm, you buy a wealth manager, you can plug all those services in to that customer. So that's a roll up. It's all about creating massive shareholder value. It's all about creating massive customer value, and then really leveraging a lot of these great things in these deals so that every business in the roll up benefits from it.
I love it. I love it. Cross-selling, cross-skilling, rolling up. And the beautiful thing about the roll-up strategy is that, like you were talking about the multiples, right? Well, the multiples change when you get above a certain level of EBITDA, right?
They do, right? So most small businesses, depending on the industry, let's pick 3 as the average. There are 2 things that drive a multiple. One is the sophistication of the business. So the best businesses in the world will command a much higher multiple than an average business because everybody wants to buy it. And then the higher the actual profitability, the higher the multiple as well. So if you've got a best-in-class business with really high profits, you'll command, the highest multiple in the market, right? Every industry has a range of multiples. That range of multiples can't be controlled by a seller. That's controlled by the capital markets. So when interest rates are really high, which they are right now, and especially in like England and Australia, where I also own businesses, multiples come down because the cost of capital is a lot more expensive. Whereas when interest rates were very, very low, multiples, go up, right? So a business owner they can't determine the range of multiples, but they can determine where they land in those range of multiples. And it's simple supply demand economics, right? Like first thing I did when I moved to Austin is I saw my very first Cybertruck. Like, oh my word. Like I gotta have one of these bad boys, right? It's like the car you drew as a kid, right? Gotta have one of these. So I thought, right, go to Tesla.com and buy a Cybertruck. They're like $70,000, right? For one of the decent ones. 5-year wait list. What? I want one now. Well, you can buy one now, but they're $150,000. You got to pay double the price because the supply is way below the demand for that product. Like I remember my 16-year-old now, when he wanted his first Buzz Lightyear, like, I queued up I think, do I queue up for 4 hours and buy one, or do I go on eBay and pay 3 times the price? Yeah, I did the latter, right? But when the PS5 came out in COVID,
Yep.
you couldn't get them for love nor money. So like we paid $1,000 for one of those, right? Supply demand economics is the same when you're buying a business. The best businesses in the world, irrespective of how big they are, everybody wants to buy them. So that pushes the multiples up. And I actually don't recommend you buy a business, right? There's 3 types of businesses. There's businesses that are in a lot of trouble that you can buy for $1. Don't buy that. You're inheriting somebody else's problems. Don't buy the best business in the world because you're going to pay a massive premium. It's going to be really hard to finance it. And then there's not a lot of value that you can add, to be honest. You want to buy the business in the middle. You want to buy the good business that you can turn into a great business because there's loads of those around. You can buy them not only for sensible multiples, but you can buy them creatively as well. One of the big myths before you get into this game is most people think 2 things, right? They think if I want to buy $1 million company, they think, number 1, I got to put all the money down at close. And they think, number 2, I've got to personally write that check. You don't, right? You don't have to do that. You can use other people's money to do these deals. And you can also structure the deal in some cases, not all. You can also structure the deal where buyer and seller are both sharing, the risk of the transaction. My golden rule is I will never, ever put 100% of the money down. I've only ever done it once and I'll never do it again, right? It was a fully financed deal. It wasn't any of my money, but the seller's like, I need all my money at close. We negotiated a much lower price. And he promised me a 90-day handover. The following day, I met him at the business. He was on the beach. He had no incentive to stay in that business and kind of help me or my partners with anything, right? So giving them a little bit of psychological skin in the game through either a seller note or through an earnout or through some other mechanism is absolutely crucial. But like 2 of my favorite deal structures, just to briefly mention, is, I love doing SBA deals now that they've really relaxed the rules on the cap, and you can do lots of deals in different NACE codes now and not affect the 5 million cap that they've got. I love the SBA because in an SBA deal, you're typically putting 80 to 90% of the money down at closing. So you can negotiate a much lower valuation, to buy that business versus a lot of the other deals that I do, which is another favorite deal structure of mine, is something called the annuity deal, where I'm paying a lot more money to buy the company, often double the amount that the seller believes the business is worth. But I'm paying for that business over 10 years. I'm not putting anything down at the closing table. It's a 10-year seller finance note, fully secured on the business with a performance guarantee. And a lot of people think, well, that's crazy. Why would people want to sell a business and get paid over 10 years? If they know, like, and trust you and see you as that safe pair of hands, there's some amazing benefits doing that deal. Number 1, you can do that deal in a week because you're not going to a bank who's going to do due diligence that's going to give you brain damage. Number 2, you can pay the seller a lot more money, so they're getting a lot more value for their work. And number 3, they will pay a lot less tax, right? So the way the tax code changed as part of the CARES Act, if you get installment money, it's called an installment sale under IRS. I think it's tax code 237. You're only paying the tax now in the year that you actually get the money. So they're not hit with a massive tax bill at the closing table. They're just getting incremental money. And a lot of sellers, particularly retirees, they don't necessarily want a big capital gain. They want income, right? Do you know the average 401k for a business owner that's retiring is only $202,000, according to the Estate Planning Institute? You can't retire on that. So they're trying to sell their business, pay all the tax, invest the money into the market, and then get an annuity payment to top up their retirement account. We can do that through buying the business and creatively structuring it in that way. Now, that doesn't work for everybody, right? Some people, particularly entrepreneurs that want to go on something else, they want the capital that they can then go and reinvest. But for a retiring baby boomer, we find the strategy works really, really well. In some cases, not all.
I believe it. I mean, that's what we've heard time and time again from almost everyone we've been approaching to structure an offer is that we just want to take some cash off the table. We want to be able, like, all of our time, all of our energy, all of our wealth is in this business. And as we know, you can't eat equity, right? So, a lot of folks would like to take something off the table and do that. I love the installment sale process. And the other thing I think that a lot of people, I started out with learning about real estate investing 20 years ago, thinking that was going to be my road to riches, right? And I got in right before the crash. So I decided to do the worst possible thing with timing, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I learned early on was that you don't know the seller's reason for wanting to sell, right? And you should not assume or presume to know what that is, because that changes the dynamics of the sale, right? And I think it's so important to get in there. And like you were saying, you're working with these companies that are, maybe it's, the founder is still the CEO, they're still the operator, and they've been doing it and they're the expert in that case, and they just want to be done. And so when somebody says, well, why would they sell on an installment? It's, well, maybe they still want the income, but they don't want the headache anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they're getting too old and they just want to travel the country, or they want to see their whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the conversations with them, you'll never know. Right.
Yeah. Asking why a seller wants to sell the business is actually not only the most important question to ask, but it's also the first question. So when I'm in a typical seller meeting, either on Zoom or in person, I was talking to some owners of an Australian company late last night, which is the morning their time. And, it's good to have this conversation face to face so that you can read their body language when they're talking to you. So I always ask the question, like, why you're selling. And what we do in Dealmaker Wealth Society is we've figured out how to measure seller psychology in terms of a metric. I showed you the multiple I built while I was on stage, right, at your event. I can measure seller psychology, and based on that score, how that impacts the valuation and the structure of the deal. And we call it the MUD score, right? Motivation, urgency, and level of distress, right? So if you think about two businesses that are identical, right? They have the same revenue, the same cash flow, the same balance sheet. They might even sell the same product or service, and they're in the same town. They're identical businesses, right? One business could be worth massively more than the other purely based on that MUD score. If you've got a 40-year-old entrepreneur having a lot of fun, works on the business, not in the business, works maybe 10 hours a week, he'll sell the business to you, right? But he might want a 5 or 6 times multiple, and he might want most of the money at closing, right? Whereas the other seller might be working in the business, wants to retire, bored, burnt out, frustrated, could be sick, could be dying in some cases, not him or her, but a family member instead. Irrespective of what the business's value is, he's going to take a lower valuation and entertain a much more creative deal with you because his motivation, urgency, and distress is so much higher. And nobody else talks about that, right? And that blows my mind. And to be fair, when I came into Main Street deal making, I didn't know any of this stuff, right? I come from the Wall Street world where it was all math and share swaps and legal structures, right? It really blew my mind how different the deal making world is when you get into small business acquisitions, particularly with like retiring boomers, which make up the bulk of the 2 million or so businesses to sell today. So understanding that seller psychology is so important. And why that's also really important is most of the businesses I look at, they've never sold a business before. They don't know what's going to happen, right? Like you've got children, right?
Yep.
So like I liken this to becoming a parent, right? So I've got 2 boys. One's 27, the other one's 16, right? When my 27-year-old was born back in 1996, I was absolutely terrified of the process. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was nervous. Yep. I was emotional. I was an absolute basket case because I didn't know what was going to happen, right? And a lot of business owners feel like that because they don't know what they don't know. They've never been through it before yet. When my second son was born, out he came. It was great. It was a breeze. I knew I'd seen it before. I knew exactly what was going to happen, right? So serial exit business owners, they're a lot harder to deal with because they've been through the process. And if they've had a bad process before, that can tarnish how they want to do this deal with you. But most business owners, which is a good thing, never been through it before. And as a deal maker, like, we can coach them, we can help them. Like, every time I'm talking to a seller, last night talking with these two Australian guys, they own a chain of burger restaurants, and it's my son and I's our favorite like restaurant in Australia. So we're going to try and do a deal to buy them. And right at the end of the call, he said, "Okay, so what happens next? Like, what's going to happen?" So we walked him through the process from first meeting all the way through to closing the deal. Like, what is it going to involve? Like, this is an off-market deal, which is where I find all of my businesses. I very, very rarely now go via business brokers. I'd like to find my own deals. Thank you very much. So the brokers are not involved. Not I have anything against them, but it's a lot quicker and easier for me to do a deal if I can go direct to a seller. So, like, you take an off-market deal, we'll say, well, who do I need? Well, you need an attorney. Like, I need to talk to your CPA. Like, you need a wealth manager. You need a tax advisor. Like, oh, can you help me find those people? Like, I don't know what to do, right? So you become like their buddy.
Yeah.
That, going back to what I said before, you're building up that relationship. You're building up that rapport and that know, like, and trust. And the higher that goes in a transaction, the more creative you can potentially get with the deal structure. It's fascinating how it works. And the only reason I know this is I've done it thousands of times, right? Like, I've done my reps. And it's fascinating when you see it. It really is.
And the creative side is just, it's so much fun, especially watching somebody like you who's gone through this process. And, you know, I do these events and I bring people in that know stuff that I don't know. And I do these podcasts, and I'm always, you know, left in awe of something that somebody thought about that I couldn't even have conceived of. Right. And you only get that expert status by doing it. So, Carl, I really appreciate it. In the interest of time, we got to wrap up here, unfortunately, but
no worries.
You know, this has been a great interview. I'd love having you on the show. We'll probably have to bring you back again, and we'll definitely be doing some work together. So
you can come on my podcast as well. And then I can't wait to hang with you for 3 days at my mastermind event in Mexico. So that's going to be wild.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So why don't you tell folks how they can find you and learn more about you and everything you guys do?
Yeah. So go to at Carl Allen Official on Instagram or on YouTube. I have tons of free training, tons of free content. You know, go check all that out. If you want to have some fun, I wrote a book called The Creative Deal Maker, and I've got did I give you your signed copy, Jeff? When I saw you,
I have it, and I'm actually going camping this afternoon. I'm going to be reading it this weekend with my kids.
It's a novel. It's actually a novel. It's about a buyer and a seller that come together and transact on a deal. And the reason I wrote a novel rather than a technical book is not only does it teach you the process, it teaches you the drama, the emotion, and the psychology that buyers and sellers actually go through. So you can get it at Amazon, The Creative Deal Maker. I think it's like $8. That will give you a great primer into either buying a business or selling a business if you own a business. But then, yeah, check me out at Carl Allen Official. Tons of free content.
Beautiful. Love it. Carl Allen, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It's been a great time. For those of you guys that are still watching or listening, as always, like, subscribe, and share, and let us know what you thought about this episode. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. Take care.
Hey, guys.